Hello friends, welcome back to another Magic Monday. If you've been watching my series here for a while, you'll know that I am a big fan of tribal decks, and today we are looking at a Sphinx tribal deck that I cooked up called something Sphinx. Like stinks, you get it? So the commander is Unesh, the Criosphinx Sovereign. 6 mana for a 4/4 flyer. Sphinx spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. When Unesh or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates those into 2 piles, put 1 into your hand and 1 in the other into your graveyard. We've got behind the hood 33 creatures, 26 non-creatures, 40 blue, 19 artifact. So here's our 33 creatures. As you can see, 20 Sphinx, and we have a couple of constructs. We have 6 shapeshifters, so basically 26-ish Sphinx cards, 3 instants, 2 sorceries, 20 artifacts, which includes some shapeshifters, and enchantment 10 with 1 god. Let's go back. And so what do we got here? We got our normal assortment of mana rocks like Mox Amber, Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Mind Stone, all that stuff. We've got our pump cards like Metallic Mimic. We choose Sphinx. They get 1/1 counters when they come in. We've got the this Adaptive Automaton. Other creatures you control of the chosen type get 1/1. We've got this Construct. Same idea right there. So because it's a tribal deck, those cards are kind of given, right? We have a couple of counter spells like Miscast and Wash Away. We have some control with Witness Protection, Eaten by Piranhas, and Frogify, which are basically all the exact same card. And then we've got a whole bunch of Sphinx cards. But what else do we have in here? Because we'll get to the Sphinx in a second. Triskaidekaphile, excuse me. 2 mana for a 1/3 with no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. Really helpful with the Unesh ability, where our opponent can separate our cards, top 4, into 2 piles. Even if they separate it into like a 3 and 1, if you're at 10 cards, you take the 3, next upkeep you win because of this card here. So, and it's also helpful to have no maximum hand size, which is also why Wizard class is in here. We've got this Prof's Eidetic Memory. Man, I could not get that word out. But also no maximum hand size, and this time we get to put 1/1 counters on stuff for the number of cards we draw before the combat phase, which honestly is probably not going to be something that happens often. It's mostly in here for you have no maximum hand size. We've got Mana Rock here, but this one's a bird, and we got Pillar of Origins. We choose Sphinx. We've got Pyre of Heroes, so we can swap out some of these low-level shapeshifters for a higher-level Sphinx, particularly cards like Faceless Agent. So he counts as a Sphinx, he will seek a Sphinx, and then we can sacrifice him to bring out a 4-mana cost Sphinx. We've got another control card here with Imprisoned in the Moon, which is really fun to use on an opponent's commander. We've got Choice of Fortunes, which lets us seek, and we have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. We have a Mimic here to copy any card, any creature that we control. Herald's Horn, we choose Sphinx, they cost 1 less. Icon of Ancestry, we choose Sphinx, they get +1/1. Standard tribal stuff. Then we have the whole bunch of Sphinxes. We have the Master of Winds, which I don't think is great, but whatever. Curator of Mysteries, pretty useless because there's not really a lot of cycling or discarding in this deck, but it's a 4 mana for a 4/4 flyer. This one I like. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, investigate, and then sacrifice a clue to seek an instant or sorcery card. We only have a total of 5 instant and sorcery cards, so we can seek more specifically, like higher percentage odds of getting what we want. Another copy a creature on the battlefield, except it's also a spirit. So this can trigger our Unesh as well if we copy a Sphinx. Sphinx of Foresight, whatever, it's 4 for a 4/4 that lets us scry 1. Stoic Sphinx has hexproof as long as you haven't cast a spell this turn. Surgical Metamorph lets us copy any permanent on the battlefield, not even just ones that we control, but we could copy a Sphinx. We have Thassa to bounce them in and out to trigger Unesh again. Visage Bandit lets us copy a creature we control. Roaming Throne, that's an interesting one. Choose a creature type, obviously Sphinx. This is also a Sphinx in addition to a Golem, and if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers again. Which means that we can get Unesh going twice for each Sphinx that comes into play. Lets us get to the cards that we want depending on the circumstance, whether it's the Triskaidekaphile or it's, for example, a River's Rebuke. Lets us get there quicker. We got a Bell Tower Sphinx, lets us mill a little bit and basically have a blocker. This one is actually pretty useful. Lets us pay 2 life to reduce the mana cost by 1 blue. And then whenever we cast a blue permanent, we draw a card. Kindred Discovery lets us draw cards like mad. Marauding Sphinx is a flying vigilance ward 2. Whenever you commit a crime, surveil 2 once per turn. We don't really commit a lot of crimes. It's a Sphinx. Reflections lets us make a copy of a Sphinx, so that's cool. That will trigger Unesh twice as well. Serum Sovereign, the Phyrexian Sphinx. We do have a fair number of non-creature spells, but not that many. It's mostly here just to be a 4/4 flyer. But, if we get oil counters on it, we can draw cards. Sphinx of the Clear Skies. This is another one that it's like Unesh, but I don't know. It has to deal damage, combat damage to a player. And it's where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. We only have islands, so it's not that useful. Choose Sphinx, they get 1/1, and we get to draw another card. Agency Outfitter lets us search for cards that aren't even in this deck, so he is just an expensive uncommon Sphinx with a cool hat. Atemsis All-Seeing, 6 mana for a 4/5, 3 mana, tap, draw 2 cards, and discard a card. Whenever it deals damage to an opponent, you may reveal your hand. If cards with at least 6 different mana values are revealed this way, that player loses the game. Do we have 6 different mana values in this deck? Yes. Is that really hard to get? Yes. I mean, look at how many 6 mana cost cards we have here. We have a whole bunch of 5s. I mean, let's go back under the hood. I didn't point this out. Our average mana cost on this is 3.7. So, yes, we could theoretically get a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and win the game, but it's not really a win condition that's probably going to ever happen. Dream Eater lets us return something to our opponent's hand, and Surveil 4 when it comes into play with Flash, so that's all cool. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, instead put 5 1/1 counters on this card, Ormos Archive Keeper. Pay 3 mana, discard 3 cards with different names, draw 5 cards. We draw a lot of cards with this deck if you haven't figured that out yet. Riddlemaster Sphinx, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand when it enters the battlefield. Whatever. It's 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. River's Rebuke is basically a win condition by itself. Sharding Sphinx. Whenever an artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may create a 1/1 Thopter artifact, which is fun. Conspiracy Unraveler. You may collect 10 evidence rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. Collect evidence means exile cards with total mana value 10 or greater from your graveyard. Because the mana value is so high, we could actually potentially trigger this quite a few times to get some big things out, such as Scholar of the Lost Trove. 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant sorcery or artifact from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. Basically, that's it. But with Thassa, we could potentially do this multiple times. Sphinx Mindbreaker. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent mills 10 cards. That's just fun. And it's a 6/6 instead of like a 4/3. And with Thassa, we could do it every turn, which is really fun. And Wind Reader Sphinx. Whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. It's not even a creature you control. It's whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. So we could draw a lot. And then we have Reliquary Tower for no maximum hand size. We got some islands. And we got a Tyrite Sanctum. So friends, that's the deck. I wanted to make something that was a little bit weird. So we're going with a Sphinx Tribal. And I got to tell you, it's really fun to play. As long as you're not playing like a burn deck or something that's super fast, it is really fun to play. Would I recommend you build this deck and like burning all of your wild cards to copy it? Probably not. I have other decks that I would recommend first. But if you're just kind of like, I don't know, I want to play something different. Everything I play is the same. I'm always playing mono white Heliod decks because I'm a total nerd and I don't have no creativity. Try copying this one. Not that it's going to help your creativity issue, but you know, at least it's something different. As always, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other. Let's get to some games.